In recent years, the Brewers have made it a habit of drafting under-the-radar Midwestern players, particularly pitchers, and two of those guys could be guys that helped the Brewers already this year. Craig Yoho and Jacob Misiorowski, you may have heard their names already. Misiorowski is considered the Brewers' top pitching prospect, while Yoho has been arguably their best performer in the minor leagues this year. Could the two of them help the Brewers get outs down the stretch? First, let's look at the kind of seasons they're having right now. Craig Yoho's season is incredible across high A, double A, and triple A at the time of this recording. He's allowed just 4 earned runs in 45 innings. Clearly, the numbers are there, most of those coming at high A and double A, but his first 2 innings in triple A, 4 strikeouts, no base runners. So we're not going to draw too much from that sample size, but he seems to be fitting in pretty nicely in triple A. Jacob Misiorowski hasn't had quite the same success that Yoho has. He hasn't quite taken the strides in command in AAA, still walked about 5.5 batters per 9 innings, which is much too high for the major leagues, even with someone who has the stuff of Jacob Misiorowski. They promoted him to AAA and had him start working in relief, and possibly the chance of him being called upon to make his major league debut. Should the Brewers call up Craig Yoho and Jacob Misiorowski, though, given their success they've had in the minors this year for Yoho and last year for Misiorowski, and considering the fact that they have big league stuff, I think you need to take into account the Brewers' current pitching situation. The Brewers don't have a pitching staff that's incredibly top-heavy. They don't have Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff. They don't have vintage Freddie Peralta right now. But they do have a lot of arms that are quality arms still. You're allowed to have 13 pitchers on a roster at any given point. A 14th one can be added in September. And the Brewers already kind of have those spots filled. They've got Freddie Peralta, Colin Ray, Aaron Civale, Frankie Montas, and Tobias Myers in the rotation. And in the bullpen, where they have more spots, they don't really have a clear spot to upgrade. And I think Craig Yoho could be an upgrade over, say, a Bryce Wilson, but I don't know it's worth calling him up for that. The Brewers need the depth, they need innings, and their 2 worst relievers right now are Bryce Wilson and Joe Ross. But if a starting pitcher gets hurt, who's the one that they're going to need to step up in that role? Probably going to be Bryce Wilson or Joe Ross, maybe behind DL Hall. But they might need a couple of them as starting pitchers if something were to happen to one of their existing starting pitchers. Joe Ross and Bryce Wilson are out of options right now. They would need to designate them for assignment, therefore losing one of them, meaning they can't option either of them. They would also need to clear a 40-man roster spot for Jacob Misiorowski and Craig Yoho. Misiorowski and Yoho both aren't Rule 5 eligible even this winter, so they wouldn't need to add them to the 40-man roster. We're getting into the weeds of roster construction a little bit, but it would be advantageous for the Brewers not to call them up for that reason. Are they ready for the big leagues? Results-wise, it seems like Yoho is ready. I'm more skeptical about Misiorowski because of his command issues. His command issues he might be able to get away with because of his stuff in Double A or maybe even Triple A, but I don't know that he'd be able to get away with it in the same way in the big leagues. Would a month and a half or even a month be enough time for Misiorowski to acclimate to the big leagues and be ready to contribute in a postseason race? We've seen crazier things happen, but I don't think it's likely. Craig Yoho is someone that maybe the Brewers should call up if there's an injury, but there's no need to clear roster space to hurry Yoho onto the big league roster when I think he's more suited for a role maybe next year when it makes a little bit more sense from a roster standpoint. Craig Yoho and Jacob Misiorowski, both guys that I would like to see in a Brewers uniform at some point, certainly will be electric arms whenever we do see them. I'm just not sure if now is the time to add them to the roster.